You were the first Kistner child born in Grant County.
That's right.
And before that, how many brothers and sisters were born in Germany?
There was 5. One little girl died over there. I don't know what was the matter with her. 4 of them come on over here
All right.
with the folks.
Your parents and 4 children came to Grant County directly from Germany. Is
That's
that right? All right. Can you tell us why they made this long trip?
Well, one of the main reasons was Dad didn't believe in that
Compulsory.
conscription they had
Oh,
over there to
compulsory.
serve in the service so long.
Now, the Kaiser required this of all male citizens,
Yes, that's right.
and they objected to that. And that's one of the reasons,
That's the main reason.
okay? I believe you had relatives that had already come over here, didn't you?
Yeah, the Moses.
All right. Was that any factor in their coming?
I think so. Mrs. Mose was Dad's sister, my aunt.
Yeah.
And they had 4 boys. And they didn't believe in that. They loaded up and come over here
They came before your family did.
about a year before we did.
All right. And what did they write back about Grant County or about Kansas?
Well, I couldn't tell you what they wrote back.
About your historical
It
speech.
must have been favorable because they talked my folks in the notion of coming over.
Because of the Homesteading Act was one of the reasons.
All right. I know that you don't remember, but maybe you have been told how long it took to get here?
No, I couldn't tell you that. I know I've heard the folks say it took 14 days on the water
Mm-hmm.
to come over here.
Then how did they come on out to Grant County?
Well,
On a railroad?
on the railroad, and my aunt's husband and one or 2 of his boys come to Heartland after him and moved them out.
All right. I have a couple of pieces of paper here that your sister, Bertie Beckelheimer, gave us. This is all in German, and I don't know what it is. Can you tell me? It's some kind of form.
This is where his mother was born and raised, in this town. There.
We also have your father's naturalization papers.
Old Easton Hutchison fixed that up.
Uh-huh. You remember him?
Yes.
He was quite a colorful character, wasn't he?
He sure was. Smart old goes.
All right, I think this is interesting where it says that he declares he will renounce and abjure forever all allegiance and fidelity to every foreign power, prince, potentate, state, and sovereignty, and particularly to William II, Emperor of the German Empire, of whom he was heretofore a subject. I wonder if he ever regretted that. Do you know?
I don't think so.
Good.
I'd say positively not.
All right. Did you know what this was? Did you know what it
No, I
was?
don't. It's something about where Mother lived before her and Dad was married. I've still got a watch that Dad carried while he was a-courting her before they were married. It needs some repairs and I can't find them in
This country.
in this country.
Well, we're
I
going
even
to,
tried to get
We
a
want-
guy that lives over there to inquire to see whether he could get what it took to fix it up. I wanted it as a keepsake.
sure. Well, we'll have to take this to the German teacher at school and find out what it is.
I think that'd be a good thing because they have lost, since their parents died, they have lost out on the language because it hasn't been used since
Certainly.
their death.
All right, then we have here the patent for the homestead. And I think that it's unusual that this homestead had no other entries against it at
That's
the
right.
courthouse until just recent years since you retired.
That's right.
Never any mortgages or any transactions at all except the one homestead patent.
I think it was signed by Woodrow Wilson, wasn't it?
I have just the patent. I don't have the certificate. You probably know who signed it better than I do. Why don't we run down these names of your brothers and sisters, and then they married local people, and let's get all the family connections here of all the names. Let's see, we had Minnie,
She married Edward Garr.
and then was August.
He married Myrtle Miller from Chanute.
Okay, and then the
Ju-
little girl that
Julia.
died. And Julia.
She married Charlie Benny.
Okay. Then you.
No.
No, I missed one.
Lucy.
Lucy, right.
She married Herman Kohler from Deerfield.
Mhm.
And I married Maggie Anderson, my first wife, and she died in 23. And I married this gal, 37, wasn't it?
And there's a little story about this wedding that I want to get back to, but let's go on down the
Yeah.
list here. Then Birdie.
Birdie'd be next. She married Russell Beckelheimer.
Yeah.
Bill.
He married Mabel Kinsman.
Okay.
And Adolph married, what is her?
Trula Cannon.
Tula Cannon.
Now she wasn't a local girl.
No,
Okay.
she's an Oklahoma gal.
And then Mary, and she was the baby, right?
She married Earl Moore.
No more. Okay, then we have all these family names that are still familiar here, connected with the Kistner family and all interwoven together. All right, now you had 2 children by your first marriage, Floyd and
Floyd
Margaret.
and Margaret.
And I understand that you all married within a year of your second marriage to Dorothy. Took place the same year that Floyd's marriage and Margaret's marriage took place. So that was quite a year for celebrating.
That's right.
Okay. I'd like for you to go back now, as early as you can remember, and tell me about the way that your family had to work when they got here to survive.
Well, Dad got a job for a ditch company, the first one. Then he worked for the railroad company, the second job. And of course, whatever he made, he wasn't a big spender. He'd take a little plug of tobacco and it'd last him 2 weeks. That's about all the spending he done. And Mother and the kids, we stayed out on the homestead, and they'd got a hold of a bunch of milk cows, and we milked the cows, 6 or 7 of them or 8. sold butter, and you didn't sell cream at that time. You had to make it up into butter and sell butter. And then that gave us all the milk and butter and cottage cheese we wanted to eat for the family.
Well, now your mother got out and worked in the fields too.
She done lots of washing for outsiders, ironing, and then in the fall she'd go right out in the field with the rest of us and help put up the crop.
I believe it was Bertie that told me that you'd take the wagon to the field and she'd put the newest baby in the wagon and work the rows, and when it was time to feed the baby, she'd stop and feed the baby and then go back to work.
Well, I don't know anything about that myself. I might have been one of them that she had to feed that way.
And didn't your dad, when he worked on the railroad, didn't he walk home every weekend and
Yeah.
carry groceries?
And he never took anything with him when he come home one time. I heard him laugh about that, and he had quite a beard on his face, and the dog wouldn't let him in. Mother had to go out and quiet things down and let him go in and clean up, shave up, before the dog would own him anymore.
But he did bring home flour and the
Carried it on his
staples.
back.
Okay. Did they have any language problems?
Oh, I suppose more or less some. But the Moultries was over here, and the younger boys, they picked it up pretty fast, you know, and they helped them out.
Mhm.
Dad got by lots handier than Mother did, because he was out among the public so much more than she was.
Well, I know that in spite of their hard work, they lived quite long lives. Let's see, I believe they were 98 and 96, weren't they?
That's right.
And that is a good indication that hard work doesn't hurt anybody, because I know they worked.
And they've been married 74 years.
Okay, what do you remember about your school, about going to school?
Well, I know one thing, I didn't get too much of it to start with. It started with 3 months. And then we had a superintendent, her name was, well, you probably met her, Bob Wilson's wife, Jenny Wilson. She was in favor of more schooling, and it come to a vote, and she got out and campaigned for it to get it boosted up to 5 months, and she and her mother had quite a argument about that. The mother wasn't in favor of it, but the daughter was, and got it put over. Then it jumped from 5 months to 9.
Oh, no, not in your day it didn't.
And that's kind of the way it went.
All right, do you remember some of your teachers?
Good many of them.
Do you remember anyone in particular that you either liked or didn't like?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one gal come out here, I don't know where she was from, but her and I couldn't get along very good.
Yes, but you loved Annie Huffman.
Anna L. Huffman was my first school teacher.
Oh, was she a good one?
She was a dandy. I helped lay her away.
Well, she was quite an old lady to handle the farming and everything after she lost her husband.
And she helped Pete get his birth certificate in those later years when it was hard to get. She fixed up an affidavit that he had.
She wrote that thing out just as good as anybody in Grant County could and sent it in. They never questioned it a minute. They just accepted it right now.
Well, I know the Swennies and the Huffmans and the, oh, let's see, the Riders and the McRaes, and who else lived up in your neighborhood?
Well, the Moultries, my dad, Eigenauer and Schaefer's. I own the quarter that the man lived on that Charlie Gall bumped off with a high-powered rifle.
Okay, do you remember why he did that?
Well, this guy was a Frenchman, and he was kind of a bully, and this boy was hauling water from the neighbors. And every time he'd go over there, that guy'd run him back to the house. He'd go down there and go to shooting at him with a 6-shooter.
Stoffel was his name.
Off of a horse. And that kid got tired of it. He went and got him a high-powered rifle. That morning, he went around and kind of hide himself down the draw, and then come up out of that draw when he saw that kid coming. Got to shooting at him, and that kid got out of his wagon, got his rifle, and returned the compliments. And he's getting so close to him, this guy jumped off his horse and got in behind his horse and was shooting under her neck. And that kid won.
Charlie Gall.
Gall shot at him again and hit the horse's front leg and broke her leg, and she jerked away from him and left him out in the open. He just finished him right there.
What was the outcome of that?
They had a lawsuit over it, turned him loose, said he was justified in doing it.
Do you remember any other wild incidents?
The only one I can remember, Mother was there by herself one time, and 3 guys come. I don't know what direction they come from, but I took it that they come from the east. And one of them kind of, when he found out she was by herself, wanted to get fresh, and she had a little hand axe that belonged to Dad laying there on the wash basin stand. And she got in there and said if he wanted to get fresh, to just come on. She had what it took to defend herself.
A hand axe.
Yeah.
Did she have to?
No,
He backed off.
he backed off and got on his horse and they left. And that's the only exciting deal there was that I know of.
And they found out later that they were outlaws.
She was lucky then.
Very.
Okay, who were some of your close friends when you were a kid?
Oh, there's a man and his wife lived there close to it by the name of Cox. And he had another family with him by the name of Stone. They were real good friends of ours. This man lost his wife and baby when he was born. They're buried up there at Chalky. And when he left, he wanted me to promise to see that that grave was taken care of, the weeds cut down around it and kept up in shape. And I've lived up to that promise ever since. He went to Kansas City and started a grocery store, and I never did hear from him. Him and the baby, the wife and the baby is born.
Very.
It's buried right there side by side. I could take you up there in 5 minutes, go to her and the baby's grave.
Well, now, what did you and your buddies do when you were, teenagers? What did you do for fun?
Well, there just wasn't any.
Oh, come on. You must have had some fun.
I know
Well, you played ball. Probably with
of.
a
After I
string
got
ball.
up there, about 20 years old, I played baseball, pitched for Ulysses there for 7 or 8 years. And then I had a left-handed brother. He was quite a ball pitcher. He kind of took over then. And he was one of the best that ever grew up in this country. I do have to say it myself.
Tell her about you and Ori Byers running all afternoon for 50 cents.
Oh, yes, too.
Because he's an old
Well,
timer.
we used to have a Denman Grove out here. I suppose it's still up the North Fork. They had their picnics out there every year.
Picture your hands.
And Dad come around and wanted to know whether I wanted to run with the boys. And of course I could get around pretty good, but I was bashful and didn't much care about it. But he talked me into it. Said they'll pay you if you win. And there's a guy by the name of Neely. I don't remember his given name. The youngest Neely boy, his name was Emmett, but I don't remember the other man's name. He was judge at the outcome. And Ori, I guess, had been a practice here in town. That's the old town. He got the jump on us. I didn't know anything about a foot race. But I tied into him. We wound up dead tie. This Neely says, well, you boys get your wind and then get back and run this over. That's dead heat. So I learned quite a little bit of that. When they said go, we both started off together and I outrun him pretty bad. And I got the 50 cents, and this Neely, he handed it out. He was cashier. And that was quite a piece of money. I was about ready to start a bank at that time. 50 cents.
Yeah, well, they gave prizes at the picnic for all kinds of races and everything. Were you much of a horseback rider?
If it's a bronc rider, I wasn't. I could ride most horses around that had been broke to ride. Help drive cattle and mules and stuff to market, but I never was a bronc rider.
Okay, some people were telling me the other day about an old cattle trail that came up past the Schaefer place and on down to, I think, Russell Beatty's on the Cimarron. Did you get in on any of the cattle drives along that?
No, we had a bunch of cattle of our own. We had to take care of them. See, there was free range at that time, and you just turned your cattle out. Every so often you'd kind of gather them up and put them back together and put them on their home range. But as far as being in a cattle drive, I never was.
How did your family feel about community parties and dancing? Did you do any dancing?
Well, the younger folks did a lot of it. I did a lot of it myself. But my folks never went to a dance.
Can you remember any Grant County picnic in particular where you went and spent all day and all night and all the next day? And you didn't do that? Platform dances and...
I never platform danced in my life.
Well, my goodness.
She said you know.
All right, now that you're comfortable and got your pipe going here, Tell us about your crops and the economic situation when you were a young man, and what kind of crops did you raise mostly?
Broom corn and maize. And both of them was hand. You didn't go out with a combine now and go down the row and cut the maize. You hand picked it and dumped the cutter off the heads. Little old stems on it about like that, just the head, so left the rest of it stand. Then turned the cattle in on it later on. And what we didn't feed, why, we hauled to town and sold. Broom corn, of course, it was all sold.
Okay, I don't know very much about broom corn. I haven't raised it much since I've been old enough to know what was going on. But why don't you start and tell us about raising a broom corn crop?
Well, you just listed it with a lister.
The one row
lister with handlebars on it, of course.
And a horse?
2 horses on it. And planted just like they do maize now in rows. Then you went down and caught that brush in this hand and the boot in this hand and give her a yank, and it just snap off with a stem about that long. That is the dwarf. Then the standard, you had to cut it. It had stems on it a foot long, and they cut it.
That's the heads.
That's the head.
The
And
brush.
that's all. You laid it in rows and let it dry, and then stacked it and baled it, seeded it and baled it.
And may I say, that took all the men in the country to come in and help do that, because it took to run a baler, and
About 14 men.
took about 14, at least 14 men.
Then did you just trade around and everybody help everybody else?
Good bit of the time.
And where
Aye.
was your market?
Well, you had to wait till the guy come out and looked it over and took samples of it and offered you so much. And if you wanted to, that suited, all right. And if not, why, you turned him down. Wait for the next guy to come around. I think the highest price Dad ever got was $335 a ton for dwarf broom corn that got flooded by the creek and made exceptionally good heads and nice soft brush. And that is all pulled by hand. Bill and Adolph, that's my youngest brother, and myself. Dad generally fell heir to the job by hauling it in and stacking it. He'd go right down the rows and with a wagon and team and put on a row and then take it to the house and put it on a stack like that with the heads out, the seed part of it, I mean. And then run it through that seeder and baler and bale it up. Them bales, ordinary bale, weigh about 325 pounds. And so much a ton then. That's what you sold it at with a ton.
What was a cedar and how did it work?
Well, it was cylinders with spikes in it and it run with an engine. And them cylinders run pretty fast. And they had a table there, they'd lay that broom corn on there and just slide it down there so much. Just took about 7 or 8 men to keep things going straight down there. Run through that cedar and onto some horses, sawhorses there. And that knocked the seed off, and you picked that up then and butted it, put it in a bale. There's a guy up in the baler that took it and laid it in there, butts out. And then they'd press that after they got it full, put 5 wires around it, jerk that bale out and start another one.
Well, I've seen pictures of big wagons loaded with broom corn going to market, but where did you have to take it?
Generally took it to Kendall or
Syracuse.
Syracuse.
It had to go to the Santa Fe Railroad, since there was no
There's
outlet
no
here.
outlet here.
Mhm.
I hauled one load of stuff to Hugoton one time,
But mostly you haul to Syracuse.
Syracuse and Kendall.
Back in the broom corn days, there was what they called a bachelor's club that was formed, and they sent information all over the world about the men that lived in Grant County. Were you part of that group?
No, I wasn't in on that.
You
I was
already
too
had.
young.
I see.
He had
Okay.
his picked out.
There's a good many boys married girls in that.
That's what you meant, wasn't
Mhm.
Jack Blake, the old timers here, and one of the Neely boys married a girl from out of the country here. Oh, I expect there's a dozen that married girls from someplace else, got to corresponding with them, you know, wound up in a marriage.
Well, I know the old newspapers talk about this one or that one being the broom corn king of southwest Kansas. And I wondered if you were ever considered the broom corn king.
No, I never was. I could get out and pull a row as fast as anybody.
Pull a row.
So you just go up and grab it and jerk it off there, you know, and get a good big handful. You buttered it up. The butt's pretty even, and go lay 'em down the pile to dry out.
Well, what was a broom corn knife used for?
Well,
Didn't you use knife?
standard broom corn is a different outfit. It had stems on it that long. It wouldn't snap off like dwarf did.
I see.
there? There were two
They
types.
cut it.
It had to be cut.
Now, yes, did you want
Well,
to say?
there was a time then when they got their one-row binders, shortly after that, that they would bind this standard broom corn and pile it up, and then in the wintertime, when they had more time, they'd go out and cut it and then do the same thing with it as you would with the dwarf. It had to be seeded and baled and the same. But there was a difference in the grade of the broom corn. Made different types of brooms. Some of them made much better brooms than others.
I fell heir to the baling part one fall. There's a guy who lived west of us.
Well, in fact, you was the king baler of the community, weren't you? That's what I always thought of. Yeah, see, we grew up together, and so I kind of knew some of the things that he did, and even before.
I baled 3,300 bales that fall.
How many could you do in a day?
Well, we done 67 bales one time there at Harvey's in less than a day.
Is that a record, sort of?
That is a record for us up there, sure.
Okay. Now you're still talking about helping your father and brothers. When did you get a place of your own?
I filed on my homestead the 6th day of January 1912 in Dodge City.
A few days after he was 21.
And where was it located? Where is it located?
It's the east half, 28, 26, 38 in Kearney County. That's about a mile and a half over in Kearney County, and 2.5 from the west line, a mile and a half from the south line in Kearney County.
And you've been there ever since.
Been there ever since.
Okay, now, about the comparison between the way you farmed in 1912 and the way you farmed when you retired.
There's no comparison.
Okay. Kind of give us a rundown of your day's work in 1912. Just an ordinary day. Say your planting season.
Well, it was all done with horses, of course. There wasn't no tractors. Everything's done with tractors nowadays.
She's talking about
Yeah,
then.
but first thing in the morning, what did you do?
Get the horses in and give them their breakfast, grain and feed. Then go in and get your breakfast. But the hardest haul
Harness them up.
I ever did was
Yeah,
I had 28
that isn't what she's asking.
acres of broom corn, this dwarf broom corn. And I'd get up when the sun come up, I was going to field, or if I hadn't got there yet. And a lot of times I wasn't out of the field to go in and eat my dinner more than 10, 15 minutes till I was back in there again. And I pulled all of that myself, 67 bale. My dad helped me one day. He come up and stacked one Sunday and I played ball every Sunday. Come down here in a buggy and played ball every Sunday afternoon. Worked till noon, drive down here about 1 o'clock and play ball.
Well, the rivalry was pretty stiff, as I remember from the newspapers.
Sure was.
Who were your,
But that wasn't what, she wanted a complete day's work. Maybe that was a complete day's work at one time.
well, it sounded like it, 67 bales of broom corn. Who were the chief contenders?
Moscow and Hugoton.
Moscow and Yucatan.
We had quite a rivalry between that bunch and us. They had some good ball players at Hugoton. I think Hugoton was better than Moscow. There's a few of them still alive down there at Hugoton that played ball when I did.
Who played on the team with you?
Oh, Brother Bill, Roy Blake, Earl Blake,
Fritz Carlisle.
Fred Carlisle. You know him?
Yeah.
Fritz Carlisle. And there's a guy died over at Johnson Manor here a while back, Clay Williams and Claude Pierce.
Did any of the Kepleys play?
Yeah, Clarence Kepley played quite a bit. Frank, when he first moved to town, he got the catching, but Roy Blake was so far ahead of him that Frank had let him out. That Roy Blake was one of the best catchers I ever saw work.
You and Fred Carlisle are the only ones left on the Ulysses.
Joe Anderson. You know
Ulysses.
him?
No, Alan better, but I know him.
Now Joe's older quite a lot.
Well, he couldn't start where Joe left off.
Well, maybe he had different talents.
He lived in a different area.
Okay.
He was left-handed, and him and my brother, he was left-handed. You let a guy get off of that third base more than 6 feet now, he was a dead duck. Now they just pick him off. Joe just run over there just like that. With that glove out, he had
This thing folded up.
caught right on him.
Okay.
They was the slickest two guys I ever saw on base.
I know that you lived up in the Shockey area and then over in the edge of Kearney County. And I doubt that you remember much about the moving of Ulysses. Did you
Yeah,
have
I
any
remember.
connection with that?
I never had anything to do with it at all. But I do know we used to go to Ulysses long before they moved.
Old Ulysses.
Yes.
Old Ulysses. My dad, after he was a wheelwright in Germany, now if you know what that is, that is his trade. And when he come over here, there wasn't no work of that kind around here, so he took up carpentering. He done lots of carpentering around the country. That big old barn that Charlie Hickok had in the old town, Dad built that. And he done a lot of carpenter work for George Bosler and another family up there that lived east of Bosler's, Burns. Done a lot of carpenter work. And he had the tools. I've still got two of the bits that he used, and a pair of calipers he brought from Germany in two planes. And he made lots of people. There wasn't no doctors in the country. Now, if you took real seriously sick, why, you just had it. That's what it was to it. Lots of babies died, and he made a lot of little baby caskets for different families that lost a baby. And you just make that thing so you just like a drawer, just pull that out there and that lid, you pull it back there, and there's the casket corpse.
He was a good Finnish carpenter.
He did lots of carpentry here in Ulysses. And when we drove up out here, Pete said, "Oh, Dad reshingled that old building at one time."
Helped.
Helped reshingle.
That's
Of course, it's not the shingles it's on now because they don't
the
have
old
it was in the old
building you
town.
moved down here from up north here.
The old hotel.
The old
Did he
hotel.
have something to do with that?
I lived
He
here
helped
up
put
on-
a new roof on it one time.
Yeah.
Charlie Benny helped. And another guy, he took the contract that lived out, he got killed in a tractor accident. By the name of Hollingsworth.
Did he by any chance, was he the one that helped change it from a flat roof to a peaked roof?
Yeah.
Do you know exactly when that was? You probably don't,
No,
but
I don't.
the newspapers think, from the things I've read, I think it must have been about 1904. Would that have fit with your dad's?
I expect so. I know I wasn't big enough to get a job of that kind. Old enough. Charlie Benny, I don't know, he come out here, he wasn't much good as a carpenter. He was willing enough, but he wasn't much good at something like that.
Well, his main talent was community affairs, wasn't it? He ran
Yes,
a
and
store.
at that time, if you had sort of had an overseer, why your help didn't have to be
Too good.
so efficient. That is, if they'd listen.
Well, this place of yours in Kearney County, I understand that you have just not very long ago turned that over to someone else.
I turned it over to her boy. He's got,
Okay, let's hear
Oh,
about
The
her boy.
farming.
Mhm.
Well, in the beginning, here to find out how he acquired my son, to turn this over, he and I were married back in I think it was 38, wasn't it? Anyways, quite a while ago. And I had this 11-year-old son. And so together we have 3 children, and they all mean the same to us. We have 3 children, and 7 grandchildren, I've got on there, and 10 great-grandchildren, and we're expecting another one for Christmas. And
Nice.
they certainly are our pride and joy and a great comfort to us, and especially in a time of need. They're right there to
You
help us.
know,
And so it's my son then, Merle,
Ryder.
that farms our ground, but we still live on the place and expect to, so long as we're able to take care of each other. And when we're not, we'll come down to Western Prairie.
do you know Margaret Simpson,
Oh,
My
no.
granddaughter.
the nurse?
She's
She's a nurse up here at the hospital. She's her
my granddaughter.
granddaughter.
Well, she's been a nurse up here for a long time. Anyway, she's the only nurse on the staff, or was when she went to work, that was born in this hospital. She was the first nurse that was born in this hospital. She was born shortly after the hospital was built. Dr. Brewer brought her into the world. So when she took her nurse's training, why, Dr. Brewer said, "Margaret, I want you to come and work at the hospital for me, even if it isn't very long. I just want you to be one of my nurses." So she's still with him. But since they had a little baby last January, pardon me, and so she only works 2 or 3 days a week, and the doctors about cried when she told him that she wasn't going to work but a couple of days a week. But she's still doing that now.
She lives down here.
Well, I guess we're getting out of line here because she doesn't need to know about all this.
Well, I think we're about to run out of
Mhm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to tell you that I've really enjoyed having you here this morning. And do you have any parting remarks? You made one a while ago that I'd like to hear repeated about the way things used to be.
Well, it was plenty tough. Don't think it wasn't.
Many droughts and dust storms and blizzards, and but you didn't get it in there about your first dwellings, because we have a modern home now, and it was a great deal different than when he filed on his claim. He bought a few little buildings from a discontented, discouraged homesteader, and he had a little one-room dugout as a house, and then by 1915 he had made enough money to add another room and drill a well, and then he married his longtime sweetheart, the mother of his children, and but he
My
started out with
daughter is down in Hugoton, and
the
she
summer
paints, China paints.
for the junior
and,
college.
The
Liberal.
junior college tried to get her to, she's the receptionist there for the doctors. And they tried to get her to come over to Liverpool and take the job there in the college, and China paint teach that.
Well, I have
And
one more question. If you had it all to do over again, would you pick a different place than Grant County?
well, I don't think Grant County's any better than Kearney County.
All right, western Kansas. I'm sorry. You're so close, I just
Yeah,
consider it the same thing.
No, I don't think I'd want to live anyplace else. These damn tornadoes and floods, they kind of discourage a guy for wishing something like that.
We have taken a lot of trips, different areas, and this community always looked the best when we got back.